Acadiana. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. Happy Thursday to you. Almost here toward the end of a work week. It's June the 26th. This is Let's Talk Tropics. Pretty quiet once again, but we've got a couple of areas of significant weather over the tropics, but nothing officially a tropical system. But we've got a lot of flooding going on across portions of Central America, and pretty decent tropical wave has made its way off the African coast, and models are still suggesting maybe some development either over the northeastern part of the Gulf, western part of the Atlantic, coming up just after the 4th of July weekend. I'm going to show you the Canadian model coming up here in just a little bit. That's got some interesting stuff, at least in that region. Elsewhere, everything seems to be relatively quiet, but we'll look for anything and, of course, talk about what we've got for the next week to week and a half or so. But first, outside, we've got partly cloudy skies. Temperature here in Lafayette, 86. Our dew point at 73, so the heat index running at 93. It's been flirting with 96 here back and forth over the last hour or so. Humidity 66%, light breeze out of the northeast at 3. That's not going to do us much good there. We really need a decent breeze and some lower dew points to make it a lot more comfortable. But you can see blazing sunshine there along the I-10 over in Breaux Bridge and Henderson, even here in Lafayette there. And as you look off toward the west, Ambassador Caffrey, you see partly cloudy skies. And then up to the north, you've got generally sunny skies up toward Opelousas and into Alexandria. Right now, most of our showers have been right along the coast and then over into Texas. But as you can see, there's really not a lot going on in the immediate area. But I want to go ahead and pull up the radar out of Hammond and show you that we do have some shower and thunderstorm activity that's down here right along the coast over to around Grand Isle. That is kind of drifting off toward the southwest. So at this point, I don't believe that's going to be much of an issue for us here locally. But as we kind of pull that radar down, you can see that there's other showers and thunderstorms kind of drifting their way westward over Georgia, Alabama, and out in the Florida Gulf waters. And you can see a little bit of a counterclockwise rotation there over Florida. That's an upper low that's kind of cut off from the main flow, and it's gradually going to drag its way a little bit farther toward the west. So today and tomorrow, we're going to be under a ridge of high pressure, but as we get into the weekend, I think the chances for showers and thunderstorms will be going up with that upper trough kind of moving off toward the west. And it's also enhancing a lot of rain there over the western part of the Caribbean. We'll talk about that here in just a couple of minutes, but boaters got a pretty decent day out in our offshore waters. Winds are generally out of the southeast at 5 to 10, maybe some gusts up to 15, and seas running about 2 to 3 feet. And as you can see, the Louisiana Gulf waters, with the exception of areas over toward Grand Isle and eastward, everything west of that is really clear right now. So some good boating conditions in the Gulf, some of our nearshore waters, and also in some of the lakes and bays as well. Still have some troughiness down over the western part of the Bay of Campeche. Now it is producing some showers and thunderstorms out here, but nothing looks organized there. Just kind of a trough and some areas of rain that continue to kind of fire up there over the western part of the Gulf. Big problems, though, down here over Central America. You got a number of things that are going on. You got a tropical wave that's been kind of very, very slowly moving its way off toward the west. At the same time, you've got that upper low that's up here over the Bahamas and Florida farther toward the north. So that's kind of impacting some of the convection, but parts of Nicaragua and then down here into Honduras, seeing some very heavy rains over the last 24 hours. Remember, there's this mountainous terrain there in Central America, so being able to handle some of these huge tropical rains that they've seen from this moisture is really hard to handle there for those folks to the south. So a lot of heavy rain along the Central American coast, and that's going to continue at least for the next day or so. And it's also being enhanced by a lot of tropical moisture that continues to flow westward here across the Caribbean. And then if you got that upper trough that's up here, that kind of gets the moisture moving in, and then you get a little bit more, there's kind of a trough there, a little bit more diffluence aloft. So that's why these showers and thunderstorms continue to go here over the western part of the Gulf, and they're really not moving a whole lot either. So unfortunately, those flooding rains are going to continue for Central America and even up toward Cuba and parts of Jamaica. Looking a little bit farther out about the Atlantic right now is very, very quiet, but we do have a number of tropical waves that are coming their way across. One right about in here, and another one over here off the African coast that's got some decent convection associated with it. So we'll watch that as it goes off toward the west. The initial tropical wave that's out here in the middle part of the Atlantic Ocean had some decent convection just like that, but you can see it's kind of dropped off on that as it continues to travel westward. We got a lot of Saharan dust out there too, and the flow is going to continue to bring that Saharan dust westward off the African continent and over toward the Caribbean and the western part of the Atlantic Ocean. So at this point, National Hurricane Center not talking about any tropical activity here for the next 7 days. So that's going to take us right ahead of the 4th of July weekend. And the Global Tropics Hazard Outlook that looks out at week 2 and week 3 also not showing any development over the Atlantic, and week 3 not showing any development over the Atlantic nor in the eastern part of the Pacific. The Pacific, though, has been still pretty active. We've got a lot of action out here right now, and it extends even farther off toward the southeast. So the National Hurricane Center watching those areas for the next couple of days, and it does look like we'll probably have another tropical depression on the Pacific side before the week is over. So let's go back over to the Atlantic. Some of the inhibiting factors are the Saharan dust, lots of that out there. You were able to see that on that earlier satellite image. And there's a lot of wind shear as well, although the wind shear is kind of dropped off here over the western part of the Gulf. So that's something to kind of watch out for with those lingering showers and thunderstorms and a bit of low pressure there. And you've also got some lower wind shear right there off the Nicaraguan coast where you got a lot of that convection going on associated with a tropical wave. Not looking at any development there, but if we had something more organized, it might have a slim chance thanks to lower wind shears in those areas. And then also you'll probably notice that there's some lower wind shear that's up here right around Florida. That's that upper level trough that's going to continue to move off toward the west. So no issues right now. Water temperatures, though, do continue to climb, especially here right along the northern Gulf Coast. Those temperatures have come up a few degrees just over the last couple of weeks on the Celsius scale, which is a little bit of a broader increase on the Fahrenheit scale, but everything across the Gulf waters able to sustain tropical weather thanks to those water temperatures that are all over 80 degrees. By the way, if you're new to Let's Talk Tropics, these are in Celsius, so anything over 26 and a half is that 80 degree threshold. Water temperatures there also right along the Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana Gulf Coast really shooting up above normal. And the same goes there for parts of the western Atlantic off the Carolina coast. And that's one of the areas that I'm a little more concerned about, not in the next 7 days, but maybe a little bit beyond in that particular area. Perhaps something going over the northeastern part of the Gulf, or maybe even the western part of the Atlantic. But that wouldn't be until after the 4th of July. So we've got a little ways to watch the models and see how things go. There's a bit of an upper trough that's going to be digging across the eastern half of the country that might send a front down toward the Gulf or the Atlantic, and occasionally you can get a low to develop on those, and that's kind of the scenario that I'm looking at the possibility of here about 10 days down the road. Also, the tropical cyclone heat potential is quite high there over much of the Caribbean and even the southeastern Gulf. We are talking about a lot of energy that tropical systems could work their way into, and with that high heat potential, they can churn those warmer waters that are below the surface. The deeper those 80-degree waters go, the more heat potential's out there. So tropical systems, if they've got the right kind of atmospheric conditions, can really easily spin up or strengthen or even go into rapid intensification. So we'll watch those areas. Those are really the typical areas where you see the most heat potential year to year. So that map, even though it looks kind of shocking with those darker reds there across the western part of the Caribbean, it's a little bit more of bark than bite, because this is kind of what our maps look like just about every year. So looking at the GFS model, it is not suggesting any tropical development here over the next several days. The only thing that I'm seeing is going into the early part of July again, as I'm watching this trough here, and might see a bit of a low develop along that. The GFS might be hinting at that just a little bit. But there's also the possibility that not only could you see something develop in that area, but I would also watch the areas off the Carolina coastline coming up for about July 4th or July 5th. And the Euro model, unfortunately, had a slower run today. So I'm only showing you the next 6 days. But going out a week or so from today, you're starting to see that troughiness there along the southeastern part of the country. So that is still at least a suggestion of the same pattern that the GFS is showing. Now, the Canadian is the one that's gotten really interesting here over the last 24 hours, not showing anything out here in the Caribbean or the southern part of the Gulf. So we're going to focus here on this trough again. And notice in the last few frames, there's a little bit of a low that kind of pushes off toward the northeast. So the Canadian is now biting and developing a tropical system, perhaps there off the Carolina coastline, which would be pretty close to what we're seeing with the GFS, although the GFS doesn't have a closed low quite yet. And the icon model, even though it goes out only 7 days, kind of like what we were showing with the Euro going out to day 6, you get a little bit more of a trough, maybe a bit of a frontal boundary in that particular area, and maybe a little bit of a low pressure trying to develop there off of the Carolina coastline. Also notice that the Pacific does tend to stay a little more active going into that second week as well. So looking back at that Canadian model, and what I'm going to show you here real quick is first of all, this is looking at the 4th of July, and you can see there's a bit of a low right there off the Carolina coastline. And I'm going to kind of go back and forth to show you how that's setting up. So we're just going to back it up just a little bit. And you see how that trough just kind of starts to dig there over Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. And then you might see a bit of a closed low there around Apalachicola early on. And then it seems to concentrate with more of a closed low there off of the Atlantic coast and then pushing off toward the northeast. And then you actually see another little bit of a low develop there off of the coast of South Carolina too. So will we be seeing increased activity going into July? At least one, maybe two models are kind of falling in line. We'll just kind of look at those over the next couple of days, and by next week we'll have a better idea if we're going to be seeing anything closer to the Atlantic or the far eastern Gulf Coast sometime during the 4th of July weekend. So watch out for that. Well, that's what I've got for you on this Thursday. Let you go and enjoy the rest of your day. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also turn on those notifications. You can also hear my forecast daily on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1, all local radio right here to Acadiana. And please follow my social media pages, both on Facebook and X. And thanks to everyone who subscribed to Acadiana Weather Today. And I really appreciate everyone watching the show, even when the tropics are pretty quiet. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. Have yourself a great Thursday, and I'll see you for Acadiana Weather Today tomorrow morning at 7.